All right, diving deep today with Andrew Tate and Candace Owens.
A lot to unpack there, for sure.
So much going on, internet fame, political commentary, and some pretty heavy accusations against Tate that have landed him in some hot water, legally speaking.
Fascinating next, right? We can break it all down. How they build their platforms, all the controversies, and of course, the potential consequences for Tate.
Courtesy of our source, Nuxanor. And just a quick heads up, you're going to hear some pretty intense opinions and content, so listener discretion is advised.
Absolutely. We're just laying out the information as we see it from the source material, not taking sides or endorsing any particular viewpoint.
Right, just trying to understand what's going on. So let's start with Tate's current legal situation. I mean, he's facing some very serious charges in multiple countries.
Multiple countries, right? Rape, human trafficking, forming an organized crime group.
And that's just Romania. We've also got the UK and the US looking into similar charges. It's like a global legal web he's caught in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and things got even more serious when Tate landed in Florida recently. The attorney general there opened a criminal investigation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and even Governor DeSantis made a statement about it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, emphasizing Florida's zero-tolerance policy for trafficking and abuse of women.
That's significant, right? DeSantis doesn't usually weigh in on these sorts of cases.
Definitely underscores the gravity of the situation. This isn't just online drama anymore. Authorities are taking these allegations very seriously.
But here's the interesting part. Tate's response to all of this was to blame what he calls the Matrix.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, and DeSantis himself claims it's all a political hit job, even tried to connect it to DeSantis supposedly favoring politician Byron Donalds.
Interesting.
Although community notes on social media quickly debunked that.
Seems like a classic distraction tactic, maybe, to shift focus away from the evidence.
Yeah, and after all that come-get-me bravado online, Tate actually left Florida 3 weeks earlier than planned.
Didn't really stick around to fight those charges.
Doesn't exactly scream innocent, does it?
Well, we have to remember, these are still allegations, and Tate is entitled to due process.
Of course.
But it's worth noting that he's provided a substantial amount of incriminating material himself.
You're talking about those videos where he brags about his pimp game.
Exactly. Those videos paint a pretty stark contrast to the persona he tries to project online.
Yeah, they're disturbing, to say the least.
In those videos, he describes his so-called pimp game in pretty graphic detail, the methods he used.
And he doesn't hold back. I mean, we're talking graphic descriptions of how he manipulated and exploited women for financial gain.
Things like lover boy tactic, psychological manipulation, controlling their finances.
He even boasted about physically abusing a woman, showed a video of her bruises.
And he filmed and published it himself.
It's crazy. I mean, it's almost like he's building a case against himself.
Well, it certainly raises questions about his judgment and decision-making. And then we have Candace Owens entering the picture.
Oh, yeah, one of Tate's most vocal defenders.
Her arguments are, well, let's just say they've raised a few eyebrows.
Definitely. And her support for Tate is even more interesting considering what we later learned about her past opinions of him. But first, let's hear what Owens has to say about why she thinks Tate is being targeted.
Okay, so in one video, Owens claims that no one in conservative circles had a problem with Tate until he criticized Israel.
Wait, so she's attributing all of his legal troubles to his stance on Israel?
Essentially, yeah.
But we just heard Tate himself, in his own words, describing actions that could be construed as criminal.
It's a bold claim, for sure. She's basically dismissing the mountain of evidence from Tate's own mouth and focusing solely on his political views.
And then there's that clip where she reads Tate's lawsuit verbatim, framing a 15-year-old victim as a predator.
That's a tough one. I mean, it shows a willingness to downplay serious accusations and potentially put vulnerable people at risk.
Especially considering how big Owens' platform is and the influence she has.
Exactly. It makes you wonder about her motives and judgment here.
It really does. Hold on a second. You mentioned something about Owens knowing Tate before all of this.
Right. So it turns out there's a connection that goes way back, before either of them were really famous.
Oh, really?
Owens' husband, George Farmer, has been friends with Tate for years.
Wow, so they were friends back when Tate was allegedly running his pimp game in Romania.
That seems to be the case. And to make it even more interesting, sources reveal that Owens' own assistant actually warned her about Tate.
Whoa, seriously?
Yeah, years ago. Apparently told her that he was a pimp in Romania.
That's wild. So she knew about these allegations long before she started defending him.
That's what the source material suggests.
Talk about a contradiction.
It definitely raises some questions.
Yeah.
Why defend him so fiercely when you knew about his past?
Okay, so I think we need to take a step back and look at Candace Owens' history of controversial statements. You know, we're just trying to be objective here. Explore all sides.
Context is important.
And trust me, with Candace Owens, it's a wild ride. We'll start with her stance on Israel.
Okay, lay it on.
Get this. Owens has blamed Israel for everything, from 9/11 to Jeffrey Epstein to some global blackmail conspiracy.
Hold on, she's blaming Israel for all of that.
Yeah, let's just say her reasoning is a bit out there. Seems to be connecting dots that don't really exist.
Sounds like a worldview based more on speculation than fact.
And it's not just Israel. She's also questioned the existence of dinosaurs. The shape of the Earth, even brought up the flat Earth theory a couple of times.
Wow. So she rejects mainstream science.
It's like she picks and chooses which facts she accepts based on whether they fit her opinions.
Interesting. What do you think that says about her approach to information?
Tough to say. Maybe we'll get some more insights as we go deeper. But it doesn't end there. She's defended. Kanye West's anti-Semitic remarks, refused to denounce Hitler, even blamed a Jewish doctor for Kanye's mental health struggles.
These are serious accusations.
Right.
And a huge shift from her earlier pro-Israel tweets.
Right. A total 180.
Makes you wonder what caused such a dramatic change in her thinking.
So last time we were getting into some of Candace Owens' more controversial statements, particularly her views on Israel and other, let's say, unconventional ideas.
Yeah, her embrace of fringe theories like flat Earth, alongside her criticisms of established science, it raises interesting questions about how people form their world,
It's like she's built her own reality, picking and choosing which facts to accept based on whether they support her.
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
Yeah.
She seems to reject what she calls the cult of science, dismissing anything that challenges her perspective.
So by rejecting science, she can then embrace alternative explanations for things like Israel, Epstein, global conspiracies, and so on.
Right. It becomes a self-reinforcing system. If you dismiss established knowledge, you can fill that void with whatever narrative you choose.
It's definitely a pattern. Remember, she was a liberal commentator before switching to the conservative side. She even criticized Trump before becoming one of his biggest supporters.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It makes you wonder where her true allegiances lie. Is it to a particular ideology or to Candace Owens herself?
So maybe it's not about being right or wrong, but about aligning with whatever narrative benefits her at the time.
It's a cynical view, but it's hard to ignore the potential for opportunism, especially in the world of online personalities.
And right now, that seems to involve defending Andrew Tate and promoting a narrative about Jewish people that, well, it's pretty disturbing.
Yeah, this brings us to one of the most concerning aspects of this deep dive: Owens' repeated use of anti-Semitic tropes and conspiracy theories.
She's blamed Jews for controlling the media, orchestrating 9/11, covering up the It's like she's created this image of a shadowy Jewish cabal pulling the strings behind every slight.
And she often relies on classic anti-Semitic dog whistles and distorted historical narrative. For instance, her claim that Stalin was Jewish, when in reality he persecuted Jewish people.
Right. It's a blatant attempt to rewrite history and demonize an entire group of people. And then there's her theory about Frankism, this obscure 18th century Jewish sect that she claims is secretly controlling the world.
This is a common tactic in conspiracy theories. You take a relatively unknown historical figure or event and weave it into a narrative of hidden power and manipulation.
It's all conveniently designed to reinforce her existing prejudice. And the scary part is she delivers it all with such confidence and conviction. It's easy to see how people could be swayed by her rhetoric.
That's the danger of charismatic figures who weaponize misinformation. They exploit people's existing biases and fears to create a sense of shared outrage and victimhood.
And it's not just about spreading hate. It's about building a loyal following who will blindly support her no matter what she says.
Exactly. It's about audience capture.
Yeah.
Creating an echo chamber where dissenting voices are silenced and critical thinking is discouraged.
But here's the thing. Owens isn't some fringe fudge ranting in her basement. She has millions of followers and gets invited on major podcasts and even platforms other figures who share hers.
That's what makes this so alarming. She's normalizing hate speech and conspiracy theories, making them palatable to a wider audience.
And that normalization has real-world consequences. It fuels anti-Semitism, emboldens extremists, and creates a climate of fear and distrust.
It also degrades public discourse. Reasoned debate is replaced with emotional appeals and personal attacks.
And it's not just confined to the online world. We've seen a rise in real-world violence and harassment targeting Jewish people in recent years.
Exactly. This kind of rhetoric has a tangible impact, and it's crucial to call it out and challenge it whenever we see it.
Which brings us back to the question of Candace Owens' motive. Is she genuinely anti-Semitic, or is she simply exploiting these beliefs for personal gain?
It's tough to say for certain. Perhaps it's a combination of both. She might hold some genuinely bigoted beliefs, while also recognizing that this type of rhetoric resonates with a certain audience and helps build her brand.
Like she's found a niche in the marketplace of outrage.
That's one way to look at it. But amidst all this darkness, there is a glimmer of hope.
Oh, really? What's that?
People are starting to push back. Fact-checking initiatives like Community Notes are calling out Owens' lies. Critics are challenging her narratives, and even some of her former allies are distancing themselves from her.
So you're saying there's a growing awareness of the harm she's causing?
Exactly. People are recognizing that words have power and that silence in the face of bigotry is complicity.
That's encouraging. It means that maybe, just maybe, we can turn the tide against this rising tide of hate.
It won't be easy. These beliefs are deeply ingrained in certain segments of society.
But we have to try. We can't let hate speech and misinformation win.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We need to be vigilant to challenge these ideas whenever we encounter them and promote critical thinking and reasoned debate.
It all comes down to media literacy, right? Being able to critically evaluate information, especially online.
Exactly. Don't just accept things at face value. Do your own research, question your assumptions, and be willing to change your mind when presented with new evidence.
And just because someone has a large platform and speaks confidently doesn't automatically make them right.
That's a key point. Always be skeptical. Always be curious, and always strive to understand the world around you a little bit better.
Well said. Okay, we've given our listener a lot to think about today. Anything else before we wrap up this part?
Just this, it's easy to get caught up in the outrage and despair.
Okay.
But it's important to remember that there are people fighting back, people working to create a more just and equitable world.
That's a good reminder. We'll be back with part 3 soon, where we'll delve further into Candace Owens' controversial views and explore the broader implications of her rhetoric. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged. Back for the final part of our deep dive into Andrew Tate and Candace Owens. We covered a lot so far, from Tate's legal troubles and those self-incriminating videos,
To Owens' defense of him, and of course her own controversial statement.
and how those statements often rely on misinformation and harmful stereotypes, especially regarding Jewish people.
Right, but beyond the content of what she says, there's something about the way she presents her arguments that's really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Like, she positions herself as this fearless truth teller, bravely challenging the mainstream media and exposing all the hidden agendas.
It's true. She always plays the victim card, claiming she's being silenced or targeted for speaking out against the establishment.
Exactly. It's always, they're trying to silence me, or the Matrix is coming for me.
Creates this whole sense of persecution, like she's an outsider fighting against these powerful forces.
And it's super effective. Her followers see her as a martyr, a lone voice of reason, in a world they see as increasingly chaotic and hostile.
So she's not just promoting her own views, she's also cultivating this distrust in institutions and established sources of information.
Precisely. By undermining trust in the media science government, she creates a void that she can then fill with her own interpretations and conspiracy theories.
So it's like, don't believe them, believe me.
Classic propaganda tech. Break down existing belief systems and offer a new, more appealing narrative in their place.
And in Owen's case, that narrative is all about grievance, victimhood, and constantly searching for enemies.
A worldview that thrives on conflict and division, always looking for new threats and conspiracies.
Kind of ironic, isn't it? She accuses her critics of being divisive, but she's the one constantly stirring the pot.
Another common tech, deflection, projecting your own behavior onto others.
Okay, so what does this all mean? What's the big takeaway from all of this?
Well, stepping back for a moment, I think it raises some important questions about the role of social media in amplifying these extreme views.
And the responsibility platforms have in moderating content.
Absolutely. And a need for media literacy and critical thinking skills among users.
So it's not just about Candace Owens or Andrew Tate. It's about a bigger societal trend towards polarization and this erosion of trust in institutions.
Exactly. They're symptoms of a deeper problem, a world where facts are increasingly contested and emotions often take precedence over reason.
It's a bit of a bleak picture, isn't it?
It is. But it's important to be aware of the reality we're facing.
So what can we do?
We can choose to reject these divisive narratives. We can support fact-based journalism and engage in respectful dialogue, even with people who hold different views.
That's a good point. We can be part of the solution, not the problem.
Exactly. And remember, just because someone has a big platform or speaks with confidence doesn't make them right. Always be skeptical, question your assumptions, and be open to changing your mind when presented with new evidence.
Well said. Well, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the world of Andrew Tate and Candace Owens.
It's been a journey.
It has, full of disturbing content, thought-provoking questions. But hopefully our listeners found it insightful.
Definitely.
And above all, we hope it encourages you to keep exploring, questioning, and engaging with the world around you. Thanks for joining us.